I was 29 when this happened, and it was my first Christmas Eve alone in my new apartment in Milwaukee. My family had moved to Arizona that fall, and I couldn't get time off work. I'd only lived in the building for 3 months, barely knew my neighbors. The complex was a converted factory building, 6 floors of industrial loft apartments with exposed brick and high ceilings that made every sound echo. By December 23rd, the parking lot had emptied out. People heading to families, to warmth, to anywhere but here. By Christmas Eve morning, I counted only 4 cars left, including mine. The building felt cavernous, hollow. I told myself I didn't mind. I had wine, leftover Chinese food, and a small Christmas tree I'd bought at a gas station. It was crooked and shedding needles, but it was something. The day passed slowly. I worked on a jigsaw puzzle, scrolled through my phone, avoided calling my parents because I didn't want to hear the guilt in my mom's voice. By 6 p.m., it was dark outside. Snow had started falling, thick and heavy, the kind that muffles the city into silence. I made myself dinner, poured a glass of wine, and put on a movie I'd seen a dozen times. Around 9 p.m., I heard the elevator ding. My apartment was at the end of a long hallway, and I could hear footsteps approaching. Slow, deliberate footsteps that stopped directly outside my door. I muted the TV and waited. No knock came, just silence. Then breathing. Soft, steady breathing on the other side of the door. I stood up slowly, my heart beginning to race. I crept to the peephole and looked through. The hallway was dark. The motion sensor lights hadn't triggered, but I could see something pressed against the peephole from the outside, blocking my view. Something smooth and pale. I jerked back, my breath catching. The footsteps resumed, walking away slowly. I heard the elevator ding again, then silence. I stood there for a long moment, telling myself it was nothing. A drunk neighbor, maybe. Someone got off on the wrong floor. But my hands were shaking as I checked the deadbolt, the chain, the handle. At 10:45 p.m., my phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. No words, just a photo. I opened it and my stomach dropped. It was a picture of my apartment door, taken from the hallway. The timestamp showed it was taken 20 minutes ago, right around the time I heard the footsteps. The angle was low, like someone had been crouching. I stared at the photo, zooming in. In the corner of the frame, barely visible, was a small detail that made my blood run cold. The peephole was glowing faintly from the inside. Someone had photographed my door while I was looking through it. I texted back with trembling fingers, "Who is this?" 3 dots appeared immediately. Then, "You're still awake. Good." Another message followed. "I waited outside, but you didn't answer." I called 911, but before it could ring, another text came through. "Don't do that. It's just me." The call connected, and a dispatcher answered. But before I could speak, I heard breathing on the line. The same slow, steady breathing from outside my door. I hung up and backed away from my phone like it had burned me. At 11:30 p.m., I heard it again. The elevator. Footsteps in the hallway, but this time they were faster, more purposeful. They stopped at my door. This time there was a knock. Soft, polite, the kind of knock a child would make.
Top, top, top.
I didn't move. Another knock.
Top, top, top.
Then a voice, small and high-pitched, like a little girl. "Hello? I'm lost. Can you help me?" Every instinct told me not to answer, but the voice sounded so genuinely frightened. I crept to the door and looked through the peephole. This time, the motion lights were on. The hallway was empty, completely empty. "Please." The voice came again, closer now, right against the door. "I can't find my mommy." I whispered. "There's no one there." The voice giggled softly. "Yes, there is." I stumbled backward and saw something that made me choke on my own breath. Wet handprints were appearing on the inside of my door. Small handprints, like a child's, pressing through from the other side, leaving dark wet marks on the white paint. But that was impossible. The door was solid metal. At midnight, all the lights in my apartment cut out simultaneously. The Christmas tree, the lamps, the kitchen light, everything. The only illumination came from the snow glow through the windows. In the darkness, I heard my doorknob turning, slowly, carefully testing the lock. The deadbolt held, but the knob kept turning back and forth, back and forth. Then singing started. A child's voice singing, "We wish you a Merry Christmas." But the melody was wrong, distorted, like a music box winding down. The singing came from right outside my door, but also from inside my apartment, echoing from every direction at once. The lights flickered back on. Everything was normal again, silent. I stood frozen in my living room, afraid to move, afraid to breathe. Then I noticed something that hadn't been there before. Near the door, just inside my apartment, was a small gift box wrapped in red paper with a silver bow. I hadn't heard it slide under the door. I hadn't heard anything. I approached it slowly, every muscle tensed. The box was about the size of a deck of cards, surprisingly heavy. With shaking hands, I tore off the wrapping. Inside was a Polaroid photograph. It showed me sleeping on my couch. From the angle and the lighting, it had been taken earlier that evening, maybe around 8 p.m. when I dozed off during the movie. Someone had been inside my apartment. While I was sleeping, while I was alone, I flipped the photo over. On the back, written in red crayon in a child's handwriting, were 5 words: "Thank you for letting me in." I didn't sleep that night. I sat in my bedroom with the door locked, a kitchen knife in my lap, watching the sun slowly rise. When morning came, I checked every lock, every window. Nothing was disturbed. The building security footage showed nothing unusual. No one entering or leaving my floor. But when I checked my front door in daylight, I saw something I'd missed in the panic. The wet handprints were still there on the inside of the door, but they weren't wet anymore. They were burned into the paint, like someone had pressed their hands against hot metal. And in the center of the door, at eye level, was a small handprint that hadn't been there before. It's been 3 years. I moved out that week. But every Christmas Eve, no matter where I am, I get a text from an unknown number. Just a photo. Always a photo of wherever I'm sleeping. And every year, the figure in the background gets a little bit closer. I was 26 the Christmas Eve I spent alone in my childhood home. My parents had sold the house to a developer who planned to tear it down in January to build condos. They'd already moved to Florida, and I volunteered to stay one last night to finish packing up the remaining boxes. It seemed poetic somehow, saying goodbye to the house where I'd grown up. The neighborhood was nearly empty. Most houses were dark, families gone for the holidays. Our street had that eerie, abandoned feeling, like a movie set after everyone's gone home. I arrived around 4 p.m. on Christmas Eve, the sun already setting, casting long shadows across the snow-covered lawn. The house felt strange without furniture, without life. Every sound echoed. My footsteps on the hardwood, the creak of the pipes, the wind rattling the windows. But I'd convinced myself it would be fine. One night, just one night, I'd left the Christmas tree up, my mother's tree, the artificial one she'd used for 20 years. I'd plugged it in when I arrived, and its colored lights were the only warmth in the cold, empty house. I ordered pizza, set up a sleeping bag in the living room, and tried to ignore how the shadows seemed to move when I wasn't looking directly at them. Around 7 p.m., I was in the kitchen packing dishes when I noticed something odd. I walked into the living room and stopped. The ornaments on the tree had been rearranged. All the red ones were now grouped together on one side, forming a pattern. 2 circles for eyes and a curved line for a mouth. A face, a smiling face made of red glass balls. I stood there, staring, my mind trying to rationalize it. Maybe they'd shifted when I plugged in the tree. Maybe I hadn't noticed before, but I had. I'd been looking at that tree all afternoon, and the ornaments had been randomly placed. I knew that tree. I'd decorated it every year since I was 5. I spent 15 minutes rearranging them, scattering the red ones randomly across the branches. Then I went back to packing, forcing myself to focus, to not think about it. At 8:30 p.m., I carried a box of kitchen items to my car. When I came back inside and walked past the tree, I froze mid-step. The ornaments were arranged again. The same face, but different this time. Larger. The eyes were wider. The mouth stretched into a broader grin. And this time, they'd used the gold ornaments too, creating a border around the face like hair. My hands started shaking. I walked around the tree slowly, looking for wires, for fishing line, for anything that could explain this. Nothing. The tree was against the wall, no way to access it from behind. All the windows were locked. All the doors were locked. I was alone. I grabbed my phone to call the police, but as soon as I unlocked it, the battery died. The screen went black instantly, even though it had been at 67% a moment ago. I plugged it into the charger, but it wouldn't turn on. Dead. Completely dead. At 9:45 p.m., I was sitting on my sleeping bag, staring at the tree, trying to convince myself I was imagining things. That's when I heard it. Humming. Soft, distant, coming from somewhere in the house. A Christmas carol. Silent Night. My mother's favorite. She used to hum it while decorating the tree, the same melody, the same rhythm. The humming grew louder, clearer, and I realized it was coming from the living room. From near the tree, I stood slowly, my heart hammering, and walked toward the sound. The tree lights began blinking in rhythm with the humming, pulsing like a heartbeat. But no one was there. The room was empty. Then I saw it in the TV screen. The old television was still mounted on the wall, unplugged, its black screen reflecting the room like a dark mirror. And in that reflection, I saw a figure standing behind the tree. A woman in a white nightgown, her hair hanging loose, her face tilted downward. She swayed slightly, humming. I spun around. Nothing. The space behind the tree was empty. But when I looked back at the TV screen, the figure was still there. Closer now. She'd moved from behind the tree to beside it. Her face was still down, but I could see her lips moving, humming that same lullaby. I backed toward the hallway, keeping my eyes on the TV. In the reflection, the woman's head lifted slowly. Her face came into view, and my legs nearly gave out. It was my mother, but wrong. Her features were elongated, distorted, her eyes too large and completely black. Her smile stretched too wide, showing too many teeth. The humming stopped. In the TV's reflection, my mother's distorted face turned toward me. Her mouth opened impossibly wide, and she whispered in a voice that shook the windows, "Don't leave me here alone." I ran. I bolted for the front door, fumbling with the locks, my hands slipping on the cold metal. I finally got it open and stumbled onto the porch, gasping in the freezing air. I reached into my pocket for my car keys. They were gone. I checked every pocket. Nothing. I ran to my car anyway, hoping I'd left them inside. Locked. I pressed my face against the window, searching. No keys. I turned back to look at the house. Every light inside had turned on. Every single light blazing against the dark neighborhood. And in the living room window, I could see the tree, its ornaments rearranged once more into that smiling face, larger than before, taking up the entire tree. I spent the night in my car, shivering, watching the house. At sunrise, the lights turned off one by one. When I finally worked up the courage to go back inside, everything was normal, silent, empty. My phone had turned back on, and my car keys were hanging on the Christmas tree, tied to the top with a red ribbon. Attached to them was a note, yellowed with age, in my mother's handwriting. I recognized it immediately. It was from a Christmas card she'd written me when I was 8, after a fight we'd had. But she'd written something new at the bottom, in the same handwriting, in fresh ink. "I've been waiting for you to come home. Don't leave me here alone." The house was demolished in January. I didn't attend, but sometimes late at night I still hear humming. And every Christmas, I find one of my mother's ornaments somewhere in my apartment. I don't know how they get there. I burned all of them after that night. I was 30 when I spent Christmas Eve alone after my divorce. The papers had been finalized in November, and my ex-wife Rebecca had taken our 7-year-old daughter Emma to her parents' house in Vermont for the holidays. I'd agreed to it. I'd agreed to a lot of things just to make the process easier, to avoid more fighting, to protect Emma from seeing us tear each other apart even more than she already had. So there I was, sitting in our house, soon to be just my house, in suburban Connecticut, drinking wine and watching the snow fall outside. The decorations were still up because I hadn't had the energy to take them down. Emma's stocking hung on the mantel. Her toys were still scattered in the corner. The house felt like a museum of a life that no longer existed. I'd been drinking since around 6 p.m. Not heavily, just steadily, trying to blur the edges of everything. By 8:30, I was halfway through the second bottle, watching some forgettable Christmas movie, my phone face down on the coffee table. I didn't want to see the photos Rebecca was posting of Emma having a perfect holiday without me. At 8:47 p.m., Emma's tablet lit up next to me on the couch. I'd forgotten she'd left it behind. A video call notification appeared on the screen from her account. My first thought was that Rebecca was letting her call to say goodnight. I felt a surge of warmth, of gratitude. I picked up the tablet and answered. The screen showed static for a moment, then cleared. But it wasn't Emma's face. It was my living room, my couch, me sitting there holding the tablet, watching myself in real time through the camera. The call was coming from inside the house. I pulled the tablet away from my face, staring at the screen. I could see myself in the image, confused, scared. The camera angle was low, pointed upward. Before I could hang up, text appeared overlaid on the video feed. 10 minutes. My hands started shaking. I looked around the living room. Nothing. No one. The tablet was here in my hands. How could it be calling itself? I closed the app and reopened it. The call was still connected. The video still showed me, but the angle had shifted slightly, like the camera had moved. I stood up and searched the living room, looking behind furniture, checking corners. Nothing. The video feed followed my movements, showing me from that same low angle. Then I realized where it was coming from. I ran upstairs to Emma's bedroom. The room was dark, exactly as she'd left it. Toys on the floor, books scattered on her desk. And there, sitting on her bed, was her tablet. The identical model to the one in my hand. Its screen was glowing, camera active, pointed toward the door, pointed at me. But Emma had taken her tablet with her. I'd seen her pack it. I'd watched her put it in her backpack. My mind raced, trying to understand. We'd bought her a new one for her birthday. This was the old one. I thought we'd donated it. The tablet in my hand buzzed. New text on the screen. 9 minutes. But the voice that spoke it came from the tablet on Emma's bed. My own voice, flat and emotionless, saying, 9 minutes. I grabbed the tablet from the bed and tried to end the call. The screen wouldn't respond. I pressed the power button. Nothing. The video kept streaming, now showing both tablets' cameras, creating an infinite loop of reflections. And in each reflection, I could see myself, getting smaller and smaller, disappearing into the distance. 8 minutes, my voice said from both tablets simultaneously. I ran downstairs and threw both tablets onto the couch. I needed to think. This was some kind of hack, some malware. It had to be. I grabbed my phone to call Rebecca, to ask if she'd done something to Emma's accounts. The call went straight to voicemail. I tried again. Same thing. 7 minutes. The voice came from the tablets behind me, but it also came from my phone. I looked down and saw the same video feed on my phone screen. The call had transferred, or multiplied. I powered off my phone. The screen went dark for a moment, then lit back up, showing the same feed. 6 minutes. I heard it from the kitchen. The microwave's display showed the countdown. 6 o'clock. Then 5:59. 5:58. Counting down. The oven display joined in. The thermostat. Every screen in the house was synchronized, counting down together. 5 minutes. This time, the voice was different. Higher. Younger. Emma's voice came from upstairs, calling, "Daddy." I froze. Emma was in Vermont, 5 hours away. I'd watched them drive off 2 days ago, but I heard her again, closer now from the top of the stairs. "Daddy, I'm cold." I forced myself to move. I walked to the bottom of the staircase and looked up. The hallway was dark. "Emma?" I called out. No answer. I climbed the stairs slowly, each step creaking under my weight. "Emma, honey, is that you?" I reached the top and turned on the hallway light. Empty. All the doors were closed. Emma's door, the bathroom, the master bedroom. All closed just as I'd left them. I checked each room. Nothing. No one. When I came back downstairs, I stopped halfway. Sitting on the couch in the spot where I'd been sitting was Emma's stuffed bear, Mr. Buttons, her favorite since she was 2. The bear she'd taken with her to Vermont. I'd watched her pack it. I'd zipped her suitcase closed with Mr. Buttons inside. I picked up the bear. It was wet, soaking wet, cold. Snow melted off its fur onto my hands. I dropped it and backed away. For minutes. Every device in the house spoke in unison. TVs, tablets, phones, appliances. A chorus of digital voices counting down to something I didn't understand. I ran to the front door and threw it open. The cold air hit me like a slap. Snow was falling heavily, accumulating on the porch. I looked at my car in the driveway, thinking I'd just leave, just drive anywhere. But something made me stop. Footprints. Small footprints in the snow, child-sized, leading from the street to my front door. Fresh footprints, still sharp, not yet filled in by the falling snow. They stopped at my doorstep. No prints leading away, just to the door, like someone had walked to my house and never left. 3 minutes. Emma's voice again, but from behind me now. Inside the house. I turned slowly. The living room was empty, but I could hear her humming. The same lullaby I used to sing her. Hush, little baby. 2 minutes. I backed out onto the porch, my breath coming in short gasps. Every window in my house was glowing now, screens visible through the glass, all showing the countdown. 1:58, 1:57, 1:56, 1 minute. This time, the voice came from right next to me. I spun around and saw a figure standing at the edge of my porch. Small, child-sized, wearing Emma's pink winter coat, the one with the white fur trim. The hood was up, face hidden in shadow. Emma, my voice cracked. The figure didn't move, didn't respond. I took a step closer. Emma, baby, is that you? The figure's head tilted slowly to one side, too far, at an angle that made my stomach turn. 30 seconds, it said in Emma's voice, but the voice came from everywhere. From the figure, from the house, from the snow itself. The countdown continued. 20 seconds. 15. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. 10, 9, 8. The figure raised its arms like Emma used to do when she wanted me to pick her up. 5, 4, 3. Everything went silent. Every screen in the house went black simultaneously. The street lights cut out. The only sound was the soft whisper of falling snow. Then, in perfect unison, every device in the house spoke one word: 0. The figure's hood fell back. My legs gave out. I collapsed onto the snow-covered porch, unable to process what I was seeing. The face was Emma's, but also wasn't. Her features, her hair, her eyes. But the expression was wrong. Empty. The smile too wide, too knowing. It spoke in her voice. I came home for Christmas, Daddy. Aren't you happy? I must have passed out. When I woke up, it was morning. I was lying on my porch, covered in snow, frozen and disoriented. The sun was rising. Christmas morning. Neighbors were outside, concerned, helping me inside. Someone called an ambulance. Hypothermia, they said. Alcohol poisoning, they suspected. I was lucky to be alive. The police investigated. They found nothing unusual. No signs of break-in. No footprints except mine. The tablets showed no record of any calls. The security cameras I'd installed showed me drinking, falling asleep, then sleepwalking outside. Nothing else. Rebecca brought Emma home the next day. She was furious, talking about custody modification, about how I was unfit. Emma hugged me at the door. She felt warm and real and alive. She whispered, "I missed you, Daddy." But when she pulled back, she smiled at me with that same too-wide smile I'd seen on the porch. And she said something that made my blood freeze. "Thanks for letting me in." I never asked what she meant. I was too afraid of the answer. It's been 2 years now. Emma lives with Rebecca full-time. I see her every other weekend. She seems normal, happy. But sometimes, when she thinks I'm not looking, I catch her staring at me with that empty expression. And every Christmas Eve at exactly 8:47 p.m., every device I own starts counting down from 10 minutes. I don't know what happens at 0. I always leave before then.